Irena Sendler, even though to me she's a hero, she says, I'm not a hero. I just did what was right and what others were willing to do with me and with the help of lots of other people.
This is the Book of Life. I'm Heidi Rabinowitz. The Safest Lie is a middle-grade novel inspired by the rescue work of Irena Sendler during the Holocaust. The Sidney Taylor Book Award Committee named it a notable book for 2016. Author Angela Cerrito lives in Germany, but I spoke to her by Skype while she was visiting the United States. Angela, give us a brief overview of the story of The Safest Lie.
The Safest Lie follows Anna Bauman, a young child in the Warsaw Ghetto. It shows her escape from the Warsaw Ghetto with the help of Irena Sendler and her experience surviving World War II in Poland.
As I've discussed on this podcast before, there are a lot of Holocaust novels out there. Why did you feel the need to add to this genre?
It started out for me finding out about Irena Sendler, and when I read about her, I was so amazed and enthralled that I continued to research everything I could find on her, and then on the time period, and then the experiences of ordinary people. I read many memoirs, and I was compelled to write about it, even if it hadn't been published, because believe me, many agents and editors have said they don't want any World War II literature. They're not open to submissions about Holocaust literature. Nonetheless, I couldn't stop writing about it. It was just very important to me and very emotional to me.
How did you first come across this information?
Oh, so I read about Irena Sendler in a Ladies' Home Journal magazine article. If I remember correctly, it was a very brief article, like a page or half a page. And it was just one of those wow moments, like, I've never heard about her. I need to find out more about her. So this was back in 2004.
What makes The Safest Lie unique in this broad genre of Holocaust books?
I wanted to write about the many people it took to help rescue one child. And for me, it was very important the before and after. So for Anna, she had to change her identity. But even though she was young, it was immensely important to me that she didn't lose her identity. And just a sheer determination of this character to hang on to who she was at the end of the war.
The Safest Lie is an interesting title because lies are supposed to cause trouble, not keep you safe. So where did that title come from?
The interesting thing is this novel went through so many different titles. Towards the very end, close to publication, we determined that we needed a new title. And my daughter suggested, hey, go back to the list of the sayings. It's an enormous list on the website to sayings, which in the book was used as grandma's sayings that Anna remembers throughout the book. And I came up with The Truth is the Safest Lie. That wasn't in the book anywhere before this big title search. But as soon as I found it, my daughter and I, we both sort of gasped like, oh, that's it. That's perfect. So that created another need to rewrite a little bit, a few parts of the book to include that expression in there. So I think that might have been my last little change before it went into publication.
What were some of the other titles you considered originally?
Okay, so this is really funny. The first title I had for the book was Anna 1, Anna 2. And this was years ago when I first started writing, and I just got this really creepy feeling writing the first draft where she had to pretend to be someone else. It was horrible for me to imagine that experience. And that title stayed the same until, I guess, about the last 20 pages of the book at the end of the war, where she has to kind of decide what's up with her future, what's going on. And the title, when I sent it out to my agent and editor, was Anna 1, Anna 2, Anna 3. And that seemed very important to me that she was actually three people, or she had somehow grown and changed at the end. But after it was already in the submission process and everything, my friend's like, oh, I like that title. Is it about music? Anna 1, Anna 2. I was just like, are you kidding? It is not about music. And so I hated that title. So that was one of the changes.
That's very funny.
Yeah. But my agent put it to me a better way. She said, actually, it sounds like a counting book or a book for a younger child. We need to revisit the title. So, yeah.
So it had a few counts against it.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of books for a younger child, I heard that you originally planned to write a picture book rather than a novel.
Yes.
So talk about your original vision for the project and how it changed over time.
At the time I learned about Irena Sendler, I was writing picture books. Or let's say I thought I was writing picture books. I was churning out stories and submitting picture book manuscripts around town. And I was determined to find a way to go to Warsaw and meet Irena Sendler and do some research in the setting of the book. And I had a version of The Safest Lie as a picture book. And I submitted that for the Kimberly Cohen grant with the SCBWI. That was a research grant that allowed me to go to Poland, that actually allowed me to write The Safest Lie. And there's a few parts of the picture book that are in The Safest Lie. And one of them is when Anna's in the safe house. And it's all very confusing because they're treating her like a new person, but they're also teaching her to be the new person. And she suffers the loss of other kids coming and going and feeling alone. And she asked the auntie, they never gave their names, they just said, call me auntie, in the safe house, who is right? Which religion is right? Because she grew up with one and she's forced to learn a new one. And it was very confusing to her at that age. And the auntie at the safe house told her, they're both right. It's important that we have both. So that remained in the final novel, and I'm glad because I think that captures the focus or the spirit, the intent of the book.
And why did it change from a picture book to a novel?
Even in the novel, I couldn't fit everything in. When it was accepted for the award and I met with Marvin Turbain, he told me, you don't have a picture book here, you have a novel. And I thought, that's impossible. I could never write a novel. And when I finally told myself to give it a try, it was one of those things I thought I could never write a novel, but I actually did.
That's very exciting. An accidental novel.
Yes, I guess you could say that.
So you must have done some really intensive research. You did travel, you met Irena Sendler. So talk about the research.
Preparing for the research was very challenging because I don't speak Polish, but I found a really wonderful translator. We went to the Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw. They were great. They immediately understood that I was looking for testimonies from children and the experiences of children. And there they have recorded hundreds of testimonies immediately after the war, which I thought was really important because there's a lot of study about memory and how it changes over time. I thought I was prepared before I walked in there. It's one of those things where you think you know a lot, and then you realize how very little you actually know. So even now, after doing some research and writing the book and speaking on the subject, I think it's immense. There's a lot out there, and fiction and movies and historical attempts to recreate will always miss. No matter how hard we try, we will always miss the truth or the magnitude. But we try.
Talk about meeting Irena Sendler. What was that like?
Oh, that was so amazing. And all along the way, I had this feeling in my gut that this might not happen. Of course, she was 95 years old. When I got into town, a friend of mine who spoke Polish gave her a call just to let her know I was in town and I was hoping for the meeting tomorrow. And she told my friend, this is a really bad day. It's the anniversary of my mother's death and I won't be getting out of bed today. And if I feel bad, I won't get out of bed the whole weekend, so we might not meet. I was very fortunate that Irena's biographer, Anna Myskowska, made herself available and I met with her several times. And she told me how Irena feels about being interviewed. So many people meeting her and gawking at her. Irena is sometimes very short-tempered, I guess you could say, with reporters, and will even tell them, why are you coming here to talk to me? I already talked to someone else, read that interview. Or, why are you visiting me when you always get it wrong? And once even said, everything I have to say is in my book, and there's nothing else I'll say. And Anna Myskowska also told me that Irina doesn't like to be photographed. She feels very much put on the spot and being treated like the word that Anna Miskoska told me that Irina said, that she feels when people come into her room and just photograph her, they make her out to be like a monkey in a zoo. That really helped me prepare. And on the morning that I was to meet her, we called to make sure she was feeling better. And she said, well, I guess you could come for 5 minutes. And I asked, can my friend come? And can my translator come? And can my young daughter come? And she said that was fine. So I thought, well, as a courtesy, I shouldn't even bring my camera. She doesn't like to be photographed, and I don't want it to be that way. And I definitely didn't want to ask her questions that everyone else had already asked, that she'd already talked about. And she was very gracious, very welcoming, and we stayed quite a while. We talked about many things other than the subject of the book. We talked about current events. I work as a physical therapist, so I've worked with people in all age ranges, from in the NICU with preterm babies to working with the elderly. So I don't have the stereotype that many people have, that people in their 90s might not be able to recall details or have a conversation. I've worked with people over 100 who are sharp as a tack. So I wasn't surprised at all that Irina was very strong, very communicative, very persuasive, and very interested in sharing her ideas. It was a wonderful experience meeting her. I was quite a bit nervous, but I think she helped me to relax.
Very cool. I just realized that not all the listeners might be familiar with her story, so go ahead and explain who Irina Sendler is and why she's significant.
So Irina Sendler, before World War II, lived in Warsaw, Poland, and worked as a social worker. And there she worked with the poorest people in Warsaw. She worked with unwed mothers. She had a vast network of connections helping people in Warsaw. As the war hit, she maintained contacts with her Jewish friends when they went into the ghetto. Irina took it upon herself to help as many people as she could escape. She had a huge network of forged documents, doctors on her side, guards who she bribed. And as things got really disastrous in 1943, the ghetto was being liquidated at a very rapid pace. People were dying of starvation and typhus. She joined with Zagota. A friend of hers who was collaborating in the rescue said, I have this organization, you should join. When they found out all she had done on her own, single-handedly, they appointed her the position of rescuing children. And the thing that changed for Irina then, being part of Zagota, is funding. She had more money to accomplish more. One of her best friends in the ghetto was, or even before the war, was Eva Reichman. For a long time, she begged Eva to leave. She had many chances and many people who would help her leave. And Eva always said, how can I leave when my work is here with the children? It was because of Eva, Irina said, that she stepped up her efforts in the false hope that if she could somehow get all the children out, then Eva would come too. She started rescuing hundreds of children a week. But as it turned out, Eva was taken on the train to Treblinka, and word got to Irina that Eva was taken in the action and she was in the square, and they had a truck they used for disinfection, let's say, to help control the spread of typhus. So they got in the truck and they drove as close as they could get to the square, and they tried to explain, you have someone here in this roundup who doesn't belong, she's in the wrong place at the wrong time, to get her off the train, and they couldn't. When I met her, she said that she really didn't do anything special, and what she did is what everyone else is doing. And one of the things Irina said she admired is humility, and I took this expression of hers as a sort of a way to be humble, like, I really didn't do much. I just rescued my life on a daily basis, saving children or organizing secret missions. However, I realized everybody that Irina talked about, everyone that she knew, somehow was playing a part in these rescues as well. So in a way, it makes sense to her that she really was doing what everybody else was doing at that time. Even though to me she's a hero, she says, I'm not a hero. I just did what was right and what others were willing to do with me, and with the help of lots of other people.
Irina Sendler's name is very well known as a rescuer, but as she points out, there were a lot of people doing this. How did she end up being well known while other rescuers are not?
She said the only thing special about her is that she survived.
So as you were doing all of your research and as you interviewed Irina Sendler, did you learn anything new about her that you hadn't known from all of the background research that you did beforehand?
Yes, I learned a lot of new things. So, for example, the night Irina was arrested, she was arrested by the Gestapo near the end of the war. And I knew she had been arrested, that she'd been imprisoned in Paviak prison for 3 months. She was tortured every day and injured, and she escaped at the very last moment. She was sentenced to be executed and escaped. So when I actually talked to her more about it, and when I talked to Anna Miskowska about it, I learned that on the night of Irina's arrest, when she was at home, she actually had a suitcase full of money under her bed. And this money was going to be used to pay for host families the next day that were helping with care for children and hide children. If you research Irina, there's lots of talk about these names she had hidden in jars and buried in a friend's yard. Well, at the time of her arrest, before she went into Paviak, the names were not hidden in jars. They were not buried underground. She was actively transcribing the names and writing in secret code, and she had them as a ball of papers wound together right by her bed. So when they came in to search her home, her plan was that she would take the names of the children and she would rush to her window, open the window, and throw the ball outside because she knew every inch of her home would be searched, but usually there wouldn't be any trouble to search the yard. So when this happened and there was a knock on the door in the middle of the night, she ran to the window and opened it to throw away the names. And there were 11 guards outside, and her yard was surrounded. So a friend was staying the night, and she just threw the ball with the names to her. And during the whole search of the apartment, her friend had this secret information shoved in her armpit in a big robe and was just holding it there to keep it hidden. The suitcase they could do nothing about. It was under the bed, and there was a lot of concern about this because the bedroom and under the bed and in the mattress was always checked first. But by some miracle, when they were searching her apartment, they stood atop of the bed and collapsed the frame. The frame and the mattress sat on top of the suitcase of money. And even though they tore apart every pillow, tore apart the mattress looking for something, they didn't search under the bed. So the money was safe, and that evidence of her status in the organization Zagota was preserved. They thought when she was arrested that Irina was simply a messenger. They had no idea that she was one of the masterminds. So she was anxious to go and leave the home because she didn't want the names discovered, and she definitely didn't want the suitcase discovered. And as soon as they said, "Come with us, you're arrested," she hurried out of the house, still wearing her slippers. Her friend brought her shoes and took her slippers. And when she was in the car, the police car being taken to Paviak, she reached into her coat pocket and saw the names of the families she was visiting the next day. She'd written it down where she was going to deliver money. And she knew she would be searched at the prison and the names would be found. So she tore them into tiny bits of paper and fed them out the window. So there were 3 things that really would have changed the status of her arrest and the safety of the children. And she was able to get out without those being discovered.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
All right. So in crafting all of this information into a novel, what were the challenges that you faced?
There were many challenges. I especially wanted to be accurate and include everything I could, and that's impossible to include every bit of research into your novel. But one thing that I came across, both in the archive material I researched and many memoirs I read, is that the children who were in the Warsaw Ghetto were very proud of the fact that they continued their education secretly and that they studied. And many talked about memorizing poems. And some were very long, epic poems. Whenever I could find a translation in English, I read the poem to see if it would speak to me, I guess you could say, and have the right fit in the book. And I spent a long time searching for just the right poem. When I finally did, it just seemed to fit. It fit with the relationship with Anna's father. It clicked into place with her memories. And honestly, I don't know what The Safest Lie would be like without the little bits of that poem in there.
I've heard some interesting advice that you've given about avoiding reading fiction while researching a book. So can you explain about that?
Oh, so yeah, that was advice given to me. If you're researching a time period, any time period, and you're writing about it, then you should avoid fiction setting that time period so that you know when you're writing, it's based on your nonfiction research and not something you picked up while reading fiction, which might be inaccurate and seep into your work. Actually, I've heard from some writers who say if they're writing anything, even fiction, not necessarily historical at all, they don't read. They don't even read the newspaper. I can't imagine not reading. But while I was working on this book, I met with Irina in 2004 and started working on it. And some people have had the misconception that I spent maybe 8 or 10 hours a day over 10 years trying to get the words on the page. I worked on it and put it away, worked on it and put it away over time. But yes, when I was working on The Safest Lie, I did not read other World War II fiction. I definitely didn't read Holocaust fiction. I stuck to memoirs and nonfiction.
Okay. And I believe I heard that you made an exception for fiction that those characters could potentially have read.
Right. At the first conference I went to for SCB de Breuil in New York, Esme Codell was there, and she was one of the keynote presenters. And she had done the introduction to the republication of King Matt I. And when I looked into the book, I was like, wow, that was broadcast on the radio during the time my character would have perhaps heard him on the radio. So I definitely read that book and enjoyed it very much. I guess I would say that that was advice that I heard and it made sense to me and it worked for me during my project, but it might not be the way other writers want to go about their work. And I'm always hesitant to give advice to other writers because we're all different and different things work for different people.
What else are you working on?
So I've just finished working on a play. It's called If They Come Tonight, and it's about Irina Sendler. And I'm very excited that a group of high school students in Tyler, Texas will perform this play and take it to competition. They've been amazing in their study of this time period. They visited the Dallas Holocaust Museum on a day off from school. They've had Catholic priests and a rabbi come to the school. And they put a call out to speak to survivors or anyone with a connection to the Warsaw Ghetto. And surprisingly enough, another student in their school, not someone involved in the play, but another student had a grandmother in Mississippi. And she was actually a child in the Warsaw Ghetto. And the only reason she escaped was that her father was arrested early on, and he was taken to a camp, and he had paperwork and proof that he fought for Germany in World War I. And because of this paperwork, they released him from the camp. He was able to return to Warsaw and get his family out. And now this woman lives in Mississippi and was able to Skype in with the students and help them prepare for the play and their characters. So I've been very impressed with this director, their teacher, Mr. Ward, and all of the students, the cast and the crew that are going into producing this play. It's been an amazing educational experience for them and for me. I'm learning a lot. So that play, I think I finished the last revision. It was actually a line that one of the characters uttered in rehearsal. She just was so true to her character, and this line came out, and the director asked me, can we add that? And I was like, of course. And on reflection, it's like I should have written that in the first place. It was so perfect. The character is Irina's mother, and the line that was added was, when she's leaving the home, if you remember earlier, I said she was anxious to leave so that the search to her apartment would stop. And while she's being taken out of the home and her friend is running after her with the shoes, her mother just screams her name, Irina, in agony. She doesn't think she'll ever see her again. And I just, as soon as he wrote to me, said, can we add this line in there? The judges are sticklers for script integrity when we take it to competition. I just thought, that is so perfect. And of course she would scream her daughter's name as she was being taken away. So I'm really happy to have this collaborative relationship with the school, the director, and the cast to keep working at making the play better.
That's awesome. Angela, you live in Germany. So
Yes.
Can you tell us how you ended up there and how does that affect your perspective on writing a Holocaust story?
The reason I'm living in Germany is that I work as a physical therapist, and I work with American families. So most of my work life is in English, and it's related to Americans and being American. But living in Germany is a very interesting perspective on the Holocaust. They begin teaching it early in school, first grade. And I know when I first met with Anna Moskowska and Irina Sendler in Poland, that was one of the things they were saying, that there needs to be more education in schools in Poland about the subject. And it's really wonderful to know that just over 10 years later, that is a fact. The educational system in Poland has changed. Actually, just this summer, I met a teenage girl from Poland and was able to talk to her about Irina Sendler. And she was so amazed because she said, I've been studying about her, and every school child knows about the Holocaust and about the war and the ghettos and Irina Sendler. And she was surprised. She's like, and you're an American, and you actually got to meet her.
Talk about your role with SCBWI, and first explain what it is for listeners who might not be familiar.
Sure. SCBWI is a Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. They're an organization based in Los Angeles, and they're a professional association for people who write and illustrate children's books and other children's content, movies, online apps. I am the Assistant International Advisor. So SCBWI is divided up into chapters throughout the U.S. and the world, and there's an advisor for the chapters in the U.S., and she has an assistant. And there's an advisor for chapters outside of the U.S., and I am this person's assistant. So that's my role, and one of my main duties is helping the regional advisors in each country and coordinating with people who live in a country where there's no chapter, and taking part in organizing SCBWI's presence at the Bologna Book Fair, which I enjoy very much.
Angela Cerrito, thanks for speaking with us.
Heidi, it was great. Thank you so much.
If you enjoy the Book of Life podcast, please become a patron at patreon.com/bookoflife. Leave a review on iTunes or a comment on our blog at bookoflifepodcast.com. You can also like our page at facebook.com/bookoflifepodcast. Follow us at twitter.com/bookoflifepod. Email us at bookoflifepodcast@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 561-206-2473. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida at cbiboca.org and is supported in part by the Association of Jewish Libraries at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilach Makers Klezmer String Band. Thanks for listening and happy reading.